All right, so I'm here with Troy, and he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do a little bit of a video so that we could talk about some of the things that we both experienced. I actually used Troy for my personal statement, and it was a great experience, so I definitely recommend that. We'll talk about that more in the future. But I'm also an LSAT tutor, but I think if you are on our Facebook group or if you've interacted with us, you can see we're both very different. However, we're going to go ahead and talk today a little bit about what sort of traits you should look for in a tutor. All right, Troy. So what do you have to say about this?
um, so, so I guess some of the most important traits. Oh, I remember I was speaking with John, who runs the Facebook group that we're both in, and I think he asked me a similar question during our conversation he and I recorded. And I think the one thing I said was that you have to have a tutor who cares about their students' performance, because if you don't care, I mean, you're going to do all kinds of things that are not not best, and you're never going to fix them. Even if you're never going to learn, you're never going to analyze, you're never going to try new stuff. So you have to have a tutor that actually cares about their students' performance. And so if you have that, that's a great thing. Um,
Is that sufficient though?
no, I mean, if you wanted to get tutored by a 5-year-old who really cared about you, that probably wouldn't work well. But practically speaking, I don't know. I think it might be a pretty tight correlation between, you know, the more you care, the better you are. It might be sort of sufficient in practically speaking. But I don't know. But it's hard to gauge exactly, how much do people care or whatever, But I
And
think, you
what
could,
does caring look like? Because I
yeah,
think
what is
that
caring look
is
like?
very subjective. What does caring look
Yeah.
like to you?
Well, yeah. How would you tell whether somebody cares about your score and how you do? I guess they would uh, they would. Oof, we were talking earlier before we started recording about the post that I made about 160 or whatever, and some people feel like, well, I see that somebody cares about me if they're encouraging me, or if
Mhm.
they're saying, yeah, do that, you're gonna be okay, or something like that. But other people would feel like, no, wait, that person is just being like a yes man, like
Or
just
an
saying,
enabler.
yeah, or enabling or colluding with the law schools to prey on me.
Right.
So yeah, whether it's unclear. You could both. There are people you know who are good, who take both styles. Tutors who are good who take both styles. There's tutors who are bad who take both styles. I was just talking to a student the other day who their tutor was just terrible, just telling them they were horrible and they were racist towards them and stuff. And this lady was like, I don't even know. I'm scared to tutor again. I said, well, that's understandable given your experience, but but anyway, so caring looks like different things, but I don't know. I think that, definitely it's important to do like a face-to-face, kind of like this,
Mhm.
where you can see, where you can consciously but also subconsciously, you can just see if you're comfortable with the person, if you feel that they care about you, maybe less than just like assessing whether data points about, do they meet these data points, and that's how I'm going to establish they care about me.
To add on to what you said, I think one of the things I would look for in that first session, that consultation, is are they just talking about you or talking about the tutor? Or are they actually asking you questions about what your goals are? Because I'm sure you give different advice depending on what the student's goals are. Are they a student that wants to go T14, or are they are they a student that wants to go to a top 50 school and get a full ride? Or are they a student that wants to they want to practice law, not big law. They want to work maybe in their own community and they want to go to a University of Akron, which is still a great school, or they want to go somewhere where, hey, if you get a 160, you're going to get a full ride. And by asking those questions and what their timeline is and really trying to see where they're at is one way that I definitely think I show students that I care, because how I help them study is going to be like what advice I offer is going to be geared towards them rather than just forcing my thoughts on them.
Sure.
Um, is one way. But I also think you hit on a really important point about caring does not always, or even kindness does not always mean being extremely well liked. I've worked in the corporate world for 5 years, and some of the best bosses that I had were ones that praised me when I did well, but also corrected me when I was gearing off track. And if they would have just praised me when I was gearing off track or not called me out on it, I would never have gotten better. I ended up being promoted 4 times in 5 years, not because I was anything great, but because I listened to the feedback. And I think that's one thing that I'm really excited about law school. And I tell my students, like, crave feedback, crave getting answers wrong, and actually crave learning rather than just a score, because, or just a one question. Oh, I got it wrong, I have to do another question. That doesn't matter. Like, I love that you got this question wrong, and let's actually, we can learn 15 things from this one question.
That reminds me of something we went over in your personal statement. I don't know if you want to go over it, but you told me about how as a kid you had refocused on learning as opposed to
Mhm.
grades. I don't know if you want to go
Yes,
into
no,
that.
100%. I had encephalitis when I was younger, and I used to be at the top of my class, but in seventh grade, I ended up missing half of my seventh grade year, or over half of my seventh grade year. And when I came back, I had to relearn how to read. I really struggled with focusing. I struggled with studying. I struggled with being able to hear in class. And I had to, and I was heartbroken because I used to be able to get all the A's, but I would put in significantly more work and hardly pass. And so I had to fall in love with the process of one, challenging myself against myself and actually care about learning rather than the grade. Because if I only cared about the grade, it would just look like I was failing across the board. But thankfully, I'm so thankful for those study habits now, because I'm okay with not being perfect. I'm okay with not being the best, but I'm not okay with staying stagnant. And I think that my ceiling is, there is no ceiling, because I'm never going to be like, oh, well, I reached it, I'm finally the best, I'm going to stop learning.
Right. And
I,
so when you did focus, sort of learn to ignore the grades and just keep learning and keep progressing, the grades went up.
oh, absolutely. Because yeah, it wasn't, but it didn't happen quickly. I would say it was like a 5 year journey,
Right.
but if not more. But they did go up because I finally learned how to learn to their style, but I couldn't just fixate on the, if I would have just fixated on the grades, I guess I would have got discouraged
Yeah.
and just quit. But since I didn't quit, I eventually got to the point where I could perform well because I was putting my own measures in place of what success looked like.
Yeah. That reminds me of something I was thinking about when people were reacting to my post yesterday. People like, I put a number, it was just a sort of somewhat random number. It was like we said, we were talking about, if you get a 159, that's not much different than a 160. It's, in fact, statistically, it's like, could be random. You could have gotten a 160, but who knows?
Mhm.
But anyway,
And what, can you like clarify on that? What does that mean that it could be random when you said that? So
well, I
statistically,
just mean that if you get a 159 one day, you might get a 160 the other day.
on
It
any
doesn't
given
really,
day, your score can range about 5 points, 3 points higher, 3 points lower, right?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that about what
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe more. It depends on how good on like logic games and reading comp you are, because those
And
are very, very,
and how far up you're going, because it gets harder. Like, obviously, the lower you're scoring, the more wide of a range it can be because of guessing. However, not the point.
yeah,
The
yeah,
point
of
is,
course, of course.
obviously, on a given day, if you score a 159 on your actual test, you probably can score a 160.
Right, right. Yeah. But I think I put a number. Oh, what was I saying? I think I put a number on it, and then people said, well, I'm not. I think maybe part of the process in people's heads was, oh, I'm not there now, so I failed. It's like, wait, if you're not there now, what about all the months in the future where you could just keep going up? And so it's like what you were talking about. It's like you can't focus on where you're at now. You just focus on learning and improving, and it'll take care of the score. Will take care of itself, basically. And but I think it's hard on the LSAT because I think so many people have the experience of putting in time, not increasing in score.
Oh, you're spot on, and you triggered something else about caring. One of the things I think a great tutor does is they help break down the mountain for you. I think a lot of us view the 160 or the 170 as this huge mountain, and since we're not seeing progress, we're thinking it's not possible. Where I think where a great tutor is going to give you smaller goals so that you can see success if you have these small wins and you're building them. And it might only be 1 point per week or 1 point every 2 weeks, but that's normal and that's successful. I have one student that is taking the November test. Her goal score originally was a 155. She just took a practice test last week, 158. She's getting about 1 point higher every week. And she's like, I think I'm going to take January because I haven't maxed out. And that's
Right.
the best comment that a student can say, because before she was really frustrated because what you said, she wasn't seeing any progress. So she was putting in all these hours and it was annoying, where now she's not afraid to study longer because she's actually seeing the results.
Right.
Because we've broken it down so significantly to, hey, this is all, if you do this, eventually it's going to come, but you have to get really good at these small things.
And that gets into a little bit of something we were talking about before the video, which is teaching students how to study. Because once you know how to study, you can put in time and get results. But if you don't know how to study, you put in time and get nothing often, sometimes even negative, so.
Oh, so I had a student that reached out to me and they're like, oh, you made a comment that you should study smarter, not harder. Like, what does that mean? And so what does that mean to you, Troy? Because I think you actually loved the comment. Reacted.
I did. I put a heart.
A
Are you
heart.
sure it wasn't the care one? I like the care one.
Yeah, I always take Troy's cares as passive aggressive, but I think he's just really saying he cares. Because I'm thinking like, he's like, oh, I don't agree with this, but I like you, so I'm going to care it.
Did I disagree with something?
That's his thought process, but I think he's more just like, no, I want to support you. I don't know. I don't know.
The first one was the fictional. Okay, I see.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, what did you say? You said, what does studying smarter mean? Oh, yeah. What does studying start? Well, I mean, there's so many things. There's, but the difference between excellent studying and terrible studying is there's about 1,000 differences. But one difference that we've already talked about is focusing on what you can learn instead of how many you got wrong or whatever. And it's so hard to do that. I mean, let's not underestimate the difficulty of doing that. I was doing a logic game yesterday and I did it wrong like 4 times. I was like, make like videos for my students about how to do it. But I was using a pencil that wasn't any good. And I don't really have a camera set up. So I had to do it on this like little area. And, I'm looking back and forth and I can't remember what I was doing. I was missing something, or I was trying something new out to see how to change it. And eventually I realized I just wasn't even reading a rule. So that
happens to me where I'm talking, I'm trying to explain it, I'm trying to draw it, and I'm trying to record it.
Yeah. All that
and I'm paying attention to the questions while still trying to read the rules, where I'm like, oh, this is why you shouldn't only do one. You only can do one thing at a time on the test.
Right. So anyway, I was getting it wrong multiple times as I'm trying to make this video, and I got other sessions to start, coming up and whatever. And I'm getting frustrated, like, oh, what am I doing? But then I said, wait a second, this is what I tell my students. I'm doing it wrong. Excellent. Now that means I have something to learn, because if I was doing everything right, I would have gotten it right by now. But obviously I don't know everything. So what can I learn from this? And then I learned, calm down, learn, and saw, missing a rule. Make sure, always double check the rules, whatever process you want to put in place so that you fix that mistake. And that's another thing, so once you do focus on learning, you have to focus on solutions to the mistakes you discover that are generalizable, instead of just if I see this exact problem again, I'll know. Well, that's not going to happen. So it's not going to be very helpful. What can you learn that is true in general? And it's very hard for students to identify those things, because if they knew those things, they wouldn't be getting it wrong. That's where tutors come in often.
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of those things you're saying is how to approach a question. Are you looking for strong or weak answer choices? How do you eliminate wrong answer choices? What tends to make answer choices wrong? Making predictions. All of those things are some of the things that whenever you get a question wrong, you can ask yourself, which one of these areas what could I have done differently to get this question correct? But also, where did I gear off and go wrong? Or what thought process did I have that was incorrect?
Sure. Or maybe correct, but not super helpful.
Right. So strengthen, but I think this strengthens it. Yes, but that's using the word many, or it's using the word some. So just because one person does that, is that going to strengthen our conclusion as much as this other one over here? And that's just one example where I ask people, like, really think about how much does this strengthen this, or how much does this weaken it?
You love strength and weaken questions, huh?
Oh, I love strength and weaken. Yes, I'm teaching a strength and weaken class tonight.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
We
yeah.
didn't, we
I mean,
didn't, we didn't plan that. That wasn't
by the
planned.
demands,
Sorry.
by the demands of the students. They're like, can we have a class every day this week? I'm like, I
Oh,
will
by demand. Yeah.
try.
Oh, yeah.
They,
Yeah. So
no.
are your students cramming for November also?
Yes, I have a lot of students, but most of my students that are taking November are also taking January with the thoughts of they feel confident about November and they feel confident about applying with where they're PTing at. However, I encourage most of them to also take January to renegotiate their scholarships because at this point, most of them are just not capped out. They realizing, oh, now I'm actually learning. I'm actually getting, just like that student I mentioned earlier. So they're going to take their score. If they come back with a 160, I'm going to challenge them and say, do you think you could have a 165 in 2 months? Is it worth
Right.
it? And what's
Right.
your answer to
Hey,
that? Is it worth it?
yeah, probably. I mean, depends on the student and their goals and stuff like that, but most likely. Um, what percent of students that you work with end up delaying the test past the date they originally thought they were going to take it?
Most of them. And I think
Yeah.
people's first response would say that most, what does that mean? More than 50%. So more than 50% of my students, and I think people might hear that and be like, oh, well, then you must not be a really good tutor. And I think it's actually the opposite. I think I actually teach students how to learn and we conquer their first goal maybe not quickly, depending on what their goal is. Some students might come to me like, oh, I want to go up 3 points and we have a month. We go up those 3 points, but they've now realized how much further they can go. And I'm like, okay, is it worth waiting a year and getting a full ride? Or is it worth taking another test and getting into a better school? And they don't have to do that, but those are the questions I'm asking them of, hey, you didn't even think this was an option before, but now it's an option. What do you
Right.
think about this? I wouldn't suggest that if I didn't think my students were capable of blowing their goal score out of the water.
Sure. Sure.
What
Yeah.
about you? How many of your students end up delaying?
A lot. Same kind of deal. Like, they come in with usually like no plan, or even if they have a plan, it's not informed by any experience or whatever. Or it is informed by experience. It is informed by their experience that they can't learn the LSAT, and they say, well, then let's just get 5 points if we can, and get it out of the way in the next month or two. But then they start learning, and then it's like, oh, I could just keep going, and I could just keep learning.
Yes, I think they fall in love with it. And part of that is one of the first things I go over students is slowing down. I'm like, I don't want, if you are missing more than one of the first 12, you're going too fast.
Mm.
Most people say you shouldn't miss any. I give them one because misread or something. I'm like, we can learn from that, but you shouldn't miss more than one of the first 12. If you are, you're going too fast and we need to focus on that level of difficulty. And then I tell students, all right, well, you're getting to 15, like, wait, right now you're getting to 25 questions and you're getting 13 right. What happens if you get to 15 questions and you get 13 right, but you're actually accurate? Well, then if we have 2 months, all you have to do is get one more question right every 2 weeks to
Mhm.
get to 17.
Yeah.
And you're only getting to like, but we're keeping that accuracy level. And I think that's where a lot of students end up pushing their tests back is because they slow down, they start learning the material, and they see like, oh, I'm getting a little bit faster, but my accuracy is staying the same. And then they see this like progression of learning, which maybe you have a different approach, but that's probably one of the main reasons why my students push it back is they realize like, oh, this is actually how you get better at it. You don't
Yeah.
just keep doing time sections and rushing and keep getting the same score over and over and over again.
Yeah. 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 And then there's the students who just, thought they would have more time than they did. And they're busy with work and kids and stuff. And so they just didn't have time to put into it. And they just need to push back.
And I would rather people commit to an hour and a half a day over 6 months than trying to do 2 months. Like I'm very big on realistic study schedules. You don't have to be doing a ton every single day. If you can go away, like if you drilled 10 LR questions a day and did serious review, even on the ones you got right, you would see significant improvement.
Yeah. I don't think I've had a single student so far. I've had many students tell me they're going to do 5 hours, 6 hours a day. I don't think a single one has done that when I started working with them. Like, they don't do that.
I tell people 2 to 3 hours, and that just depends on how much. At the beginning, I think you have more, like you need time on reviewing just because you're missing more questions. Or there might be some additional, like it just takes you more time. But most of my students that they know the test, they're close to their goal score, the last month they're studying maybe 2 hours a day, which maybe yours are more, I don't know, but.
Yeah. By the way, you said you wanted to keep this short because people
Oh
don't have
yeah, so last
long
thing,
attention span.
tutors, you want people that are going to be honest with you.
Oh,
Takeaway.
oh yeah, the first topic,
Yeah,
tutors. Oh yeah.
yeah, you want people that are gonna be honest with you. You want people that can break down the goals for you and help you feel success,
Uh-huh.
I would say. You want people that know what they're talking about. And there's different ways that you can judge that because people have different methodologies. I think you said you want face to face, you want someone that you want a connection with. And lastly,
Mhm.
I think you want someone that can actually teach. If you are going to tutoring and it's way over your head, that's probably not a great tutor for you. I heard someone say the other day that the best, and we were going to go to, I don't know, I've never been to law school, Troy, you can comment on this. You go to law school and you feel like you have to use all this like law jargon to sound smart, but actually the smartest people don't use the jargon and they're able to understand it and break it down into simple terms. Does that
Yeah, I
make
mean, that's when I went to law school, I stopped going to the classes as much as possible because they were terrible and nobody in the class knew what was going on. I started reading books on my own about the subjects. And then at the end of the semester, I would read the books they wanted me to read about the subject and I could actually understand them because the
Mhm.
books are also not so great. The books are okay, but there's better ways to learn than the books they usually give you and the classes they teach you. So anyway, I'd come in at the end of the semester. I wouldn't know really what was going on in the class, but I know the subject, and then I just meet with people who were in the class. I would teach them about the subject. They would tell me a couple of the details that I missed in the class, and I would basically teach them how to think
I
about these
love
things.
that.
And you know, which also gets into that post that that I made yesterday that people like. Well, a bunch of people liked it, but a bunch of people hated it too. It's like even if you don't fail out of law school, you can have a terrible time in law school if you don't know how to read super well and learn super well. And so that's something to avoid too. Like you don't want to put yourself through 3 years of misery and bad grades just to say you completed it and just to move on. I mean, moving there's some
I get
value
what
to
you're
moving.
saying. You're saying, yeah. Oh, I never thought about that point. You're saying put some time in now so that your experience can actually be more enjoyable because it's not as stressful. You're trying to catch up.
Yeah, that's just one reason. But then there's the scholarships. Then there's
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
there's
No,
all
I
kinds
didn't
of
think
things.
about that post though.
Yeah,
Awesome. So no, I think what you said is spot on though, is you learned how to be able to read tough material and translate it into an understandable way. I think that's a gift. I think that's something that teachers learn. And I think that is the gift that you want to look for in your tutors because that's what
yeah,
makes someone that's passionate, truly passionate about teaching. And I think people that are passionate about teaching learn that gift because the teaching is all about making analogies, like making it
right.
relatable, making them understand it, breaking it down. And you should walk away from your sessions feeling like you have a better understanding. You shouldn't walk away feeling defeated. Like,
Yeah, that's
oh,
true.
that's how you handle it.
Uh,
That's all I have to do for this question. Yeah, that's all you have to do for this question.
yeah, and one other thing I would add, it's not none of these things are, oh, if they don't do this, then then they're not a good tutor. But I would, in general, one of the things to weigh, uh, you, I would be if I was looking for a tutor, I would be looking for somebody who is an attorney, probably, uh, who went to law
Not an
school.
attorney,
You know,
not go to law school.
yeah, you're about to go. But and there's other factors. Knowing how to teach. That's a large part of it. So if you have somebody who knows how to teach, that's probably good, but almost definitely good. But if you have somebody who went to law school and the bar exam, they can sort of connect it more than somebody else to what you actually be needing to do.
You're saying
And
you're teaching them more than just how you applied these strategies to
right,
LSAT.
right,
You're
right.
like,
This is
and this is
not,
what
yeah,
this might look like in the law profession. So you're helping them
yeah,
be more prepared for law school.
yeah. Either explicitly, like, oh, this is how you're going to use this kind of idea in a class or whatever, or in a profession,
Mhm.
or just implicitly, just the things you focus on would just be different if you have worked in a law firm and then you're seeing the LSAT, you're just making connections that somebody who hasn't done it wouldn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. My last question for you is why don't you think there's more female LSAT tutors? Or maybe you think there's a lot and I'm just not aware of them.
Um, I don't. So I know. I mean, most of the tutors whose face come to mind right now are males. Like only a couple people that I know that I can imagine like their face. Although you go on like some some tutoring websites, you can find all kinds of females, I'm sure. But but why don't I know any of their faces or something like that at
But when
least?
I was looking for a
Uh,
tutor, I struggled to find a female tutor. Like I would have
oh, okay.
preferred a female tutor, so I started with a male, but eventually I found a female
I
tutor.
don't I don't actually know that you could find a lot of women. I'm not sure. I never looked into it like how many are women, but um, I don't know. There's probably many reasons for that. But I would, I don't know. I don't know. What do
No,
you
I
think?
don't know either. I want to look into it. Maybe that's a future conversation. And also, is there data out there that shows like a lot of schools now are like 50-50 male female, which is awesome. But do you think scholarships are 50-50? And is there data out there that shows that?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I want
I'm
to
not sure.
find
I'm not sure if they break it down by gender. The
that.
data I have seen is not broken down by gender, but maybe there is some others. But I would imagine that females are getting more scholarships because, like, I don't know, there's diversity scholarships and stuff like that. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to look into it because I was
Uh,
curious. Don't men tend to score higher on the LSAT overall?
I never heard that either. I heard that minorities tend to score lower. That's what I've heard, and that's from a person who was like high up at the LSAT, and it's sort of like I've heard
Well,
it
there's
like
a lot of
manipulated.
boundaries. There's a lot of barriers there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, cultural, just the work, just the topics they talk about, all kinds of things. But yeah, I don't know about the men and women thing. I guess that would not surprise me. But
I
yeah,
was just curious if you knew there was data out there. That's what I'm going to do.
yeah,
I'm going to look for that. But anyways,
yeah.
this was fun.
Cool. Oh yeah, we're probably at 15 minutes or more.
Oh, yeah, you have to have 15 minutes or less, or we're going to lose our audience. We probably already lost them. So this is just us talking, which is
Nice,
fine.
nice, cool.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and quit it now. So do you have any last words?
No, I'm good.
All right.